What's going on, guys, and welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for June 9th, 2023. I am Graham Jason Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. Pretty eventful episode of SmackDown on Friday night. Not the most exciting episode, but between the Money in the Bank qualifiers, Asuka unveiling a new championship belt, long fucking overdue there, and the latest progression in the Bloodline storyline, I found myself satisfied and entertained by this episode of SmackDown on Friday night, setting up multiple matches not only for next week, but SmackDown in 2 weeks and SmackDown in 3 weeks. They didn't announce any new matches for Money in the Bank, and it looks like as of now that whatever Roman Reigns will be doing, he will be in action on that show. It probably won't be a title defense, but we still don't know that yet. Roman Reigns will be back on the Blue Brand next week, by the way. So, the way it's looking right now, I assume they add at least one more matchup. It's going to be Roman Reigns, and whatever he's doing on that show is one match. Rollins and very likely Finn Balor, and again, whatever he's doing on that show as the World Heavyweight Champion as another match. The 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches, and so far, those are the only matches I can see set in stone for that show. I would also add Gunther and Matt Riddle for the Intercontinental Championship. That's assuming Matt Riddle's not in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. They also announced, there was a lot of announcements on the show. Again, stuff being set up for the coming weeks of SmackDown, which is great. They also announced for Raw this coming up on, this coming Monday on Raw, they announced Cody Rhodes versus The Miz, a match I feel like I've seen 7 times. It's probably only been 2 or 3 times, but it feels like I've seen it a lot. After what went down on Miz TV on Monday, it's going to be Cody Rhodes versus Dominic Mysterio. They're doing Matt Riddle and Damian Priest in a men's Money in the Bank qualifier. And I'm hoping Damian wins. Matt Riddle, I like Matt Riddle. He doesn't need to be in Money in the Bank. I wouldn't have him win Money in the Bank. Damian Priest also would not win very likely, but I think it would make more sense with the Finn Balor Judgment Day stuff. And he just lost to Bad Bunny at Backlash about a month ago. He lost to Rollins on Raw, failing to win the World Heavyweight Championship. I would put him in Money in the Bank as a consolation prize. Matt Riddle being in there is fine, but it also makes me worried if he wins, he might cash in on Gunther. Just cut to the chase and do Gunther and Riddle in London at Money in the Bank, although if they want to save it for SummerSlam, maybe not. Anyway, so they also announced for Monday's Raw, Imperium's Ludwig Kaiser and Gunther. So it's a tag team match, not with Giovanni Vinci, because he got injured on Monday's Raw, or maybe it was last week, I don't remember. I think it was last week, by Matt Riddle backstage. So maybe it was this week, I don't remember. So it's going to be Imperium's Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in tag team action. So that's coming up on Raw this week. As for SmackDown last night, like I said, a very eventful episode, I thought, overall. Well, we opened up the episode with Paul Heyman and Solo Sikoa in the ring. And the big hook coming into the show, as they kind of teased and really just flat out said, Paul Heyman did on Raw on Monday night, was that Jey Uso would make his choice on the show. Spoiler, he did not. He did not make it in this segment. He did not make it to the end of the episode. And if you thought that he would, then you have not been paying attention throughout this entire Bloodline storyline. When has anyone ever made a choice when they said they would make a choice? Jey Uso was supposed to make a choice fucking 6 months ago, and he never did. And the build-up to like the Usos with Sammy and Kevin and Roman and all that other sort of shit, they were teasing for months what he would do. And he didn't reveal where his allegiance lied. I mean, it did lie with his brother, not so much Roman Reigns. But they never really made it clear-cut even then. And that was months ago. He wasn't going to do it now. He probably won't do it until closer to the pay-per-view or at the pay-per-view itself. And not until after the pay-per-view. It depends on where they go with the Bloodline drama. But I thought this was a really well-done segment as they established tension not only within the Bloodline, but specifically between Jey Uso and Paul Heyman. Jey ended up saying to Paul Heyman later on in the show backstage that Roman Reigns is back next week. And that it was a weird... The way he worded it was weird, but I assume it was meant to be an ultimatum with Jey Uso, saying that he'll tell Roman next week he will stay in the Bloodline as long as Paul Heyman's not in it. So either he leaves the Bloodline or he stays and Paul Heyman has to go. So it sounds like that's the ultimatum they're going with for next week's show, and that was what led to the end of the show, where they set it up in this segment. No spoilers for later, I guess, although you probably already know what happened. Paul Heyman secured Jey Uso a shot at the United States Championship against the United States Champion, Austin Theory. And in case you forgot, he's still the champion. I know he's been on SmackDown a fair amount lately, but Theory is such a fucking afterthought as the United States Champion. I'll get to that a little bit later on, but we were watching the show last night, Alexis and I did, and she watches most SmackDowns. She forgot that he was even still champion, because he just really has not been doing much as champion at all in the last couple of months, really since WrestleMania. He's been a complete afterthought as United States champion. Hardly a great reign despite all the Hall of Famers he's beat, from Edge and Rey Mysterio, beating John Cena at WrestleMania. You would never know it based on how he's booked. But anyway, Paul Heyman to kind of attempt to sweeten the pot, securing Jey Uso a United States Championship opportunity on the show. And then as a result of what Jey said to Paul Heyman backstage, Paul having Solo interfere in that main event, attempting to cost Jey Uso that match. Again, we'll get to it when we get to it. The first match in the show, a men's Money in the Bank qualifier for the men's Money in the Bank ladder match coming up in a couple weeks. Santos Escobar and Mustafa Ali. Really good match here, easily the best match in the entire show. I don't know whether Ali's supposed to be a babyface or not. He was a heel on Raw like a month ago. I mean, first of all, he's a free agent. It wasn't a slam dunk that he would lose here just because he also just contended for the Intercontinental Championship at, not Crown Jewel, Night of Champions, despite being a free agent. So the fact he's a free agent, it doesn't automatically mean he was going to lose here, and I'm glad he did, though. Escobar is a much better fit for that match. Ali is great, but Ali's also currently busy in NXT with Wesley and Tyler Bate and Schism or whatever the fuck for the North American Championship over there. So he's busy over there, no real reason to have him advance. But this was a really good match, though. He sold Escobar's offense like fucking death. The way he sold some of these moves was great. The crowd was into it. They were behind Escobar. The most I've seen a crowd behind Escobar on his own since coming to the main roster. And the LWO, for as much as he was losing coming out of WrestleMania, going into WrestleMania, he was doing a lot of fucking losing, specifically in tag team matches and in singles matches as well. He was over, like he's really been benefiting, but he wasn't really getting over on his own without Rey Mysterio. Now, Rey Mysterio was out there for this match, but it wasn't a tag team match. And they were behind Escobar, which was great. So Escobar winning, punching his ticket to the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. He won't win that match, but he is a great fit for that match. I'm happy he's in there. We had Isla Dawn and Alba Fire out next, the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions. And yes, they are still the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions. There's been no real announcement or anything made clear what would happen to those titles after coming up from NXT, because it doesn't really make much sense. It's not exactly consistent. When you get called up as a champion, sometimes you have to vacate it, sometimes you lose the championship formally. They didn't do that with Dawn and Fire. They brought the belts with them. Now, Indy Hartwell's vacated her NXT Women's Championship, but I think that had more to do with the fact that she got hurt and got injured than it did the fact that she went to Raw. And maybe I'm wrong, I have no idea. That whole situation was weird. But here, though, before they could even speak, they were interrupted by Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler, the current WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. Shayna brought up here, which I'm glad she acknowledged, and she brought this up in her interview about a week ago, which I will soon publish here on the channel, that she was a part of the, debut, so to speak, of the NXT Tag Team titles. She was involved in the match that really spawned the creation of those NXT Women's Tag titles. Back in March of 2021, her and Nia Jax, remember her, they were Tag Team Champions, which was terrible. But she and Nia Jax were the champions, and they went to NXT to defend against, I think it was Dakota Kai and Raquel Rodriguez, at that point Gonzalez. And the match ended in controversy, but instead of giving them a rematch, Dakota and Raquel, they just gave them their own NXT Tag Team titles, which I thought was stupid. I still think is dumb. Now, NXT's done a better job of making their tag titles more important than WWE's in the last year or so. But still, I don't think it's necessary to have two sets of women's tag team titles. I've said this before, I'll say it again, my mind has not changed. I just think it was completely unnecessary because they have a lot of great women, but they just don't know how to book women's tag team wrestling. Now, I am willing to give Ronda and Shayna a chance as champions. Ronda is, she doesn't really have much buzz, any buzz left really at all. No one really cares about her at this point. But, she's a somewhat, I don't want to say big name at this point, but she's a notable name. And putting her in the tag team division can hopefully elevate the likes of Katana Chance, Kaden Carter, other women's tag teams, Dawn, Fire, people like that. So I'm willing to give it a chance. It could be their last chance, no pun intended, Katana Chance, in revitalizing that division, which is great. But at the same time, I like the original concept from a couple of years ago that the women's tag team champions would float, being on all three brands. Now, the women's tag team titles were never really defended on NXT. Sasha and Bayley went there once, never defended them there. In 2019, that is. And then they lost them. They did end up going to NXT for a one-off match in 2020, I think against Tegan Nox and Shotzi, and they beat them to retain the women's tag titles. And then that was really about it. And then they didn't go back to NXT, the tag team champions did, until they created the NXT women's tag team titles in early 2021. So they went to NXT maybe a total of 3 fucking times. So I would like to see that happen more frequently. If they want to keep the women's tag titles around and not do just a mid-card title that floats between all 3 brands, which might be a better idea, honestly, then hopefully Ronda and Shayna can have more of a presence on Tuesday nights if that's the direction they end up going in. They did specifically say in the segment before the brawl broke out that they want a unification match, not a champion versus champion match, non-title, not just for one set of titles, a unification match, which would tell me that they are indeed headed to one set of women's tag team titles. I honestly did not think they would do it, but they are. So that makes me happy. This was fine, though, setting that match up for SmackDown in 2 weeks. We had Asuka's championship celebration after that. I believe that was the order of events here. Asuka was out next to be rewarded, or rather awarded, her new Women's Championship belt. Now, it is being called, I believe, the WWE Women's Championship. Although on the title itself, it's basically just a women's white version of the new undisputed WWE title belt that Roman Reigns debuted last week. They announced on social media coming into the show that there would be a championship celebration for Asuka getting a new belt. I wasn't sure. I mean, I kind of knew going into that segment. Listen, and I've said this before, I'm glad they're just getting new belts, or rather just getting new names and rebranding the championships. I don't know if this new championship, quote-unquote new, will carry the same lineage as the Raw Women's Championship, but it should, first of all. And second of all, it would just make more sense, I think. And not only that, just because it also debuted actually 7 years ago as the WWE Women's Championship. When they first introduced the Raw Women's title, I think it was red even then. I might be wrong. I think it had the red color in the middle even then. But when they debuted that championship at WrestleMania 32, it was the WWE Women's title, because that was before they brought back the brand split. And when they brought back the brand split, they just called it the Raw Women's Championship, and then debuted a SmackDown Women's Championship soon after. The design is lazy. I get it. It's the same design for the WWE title. I understand that. I wasn't expecting a new design. I figured they would do this. My biggest problem with the belt, honestly, I think it looks nicer than Roman's. It's got the yellow in the middle like Roman's. It just has a white strap. Maybe it's the yellow and the white. I think the yellow and the black looks bad. It's not like gold, like black and gold, like NXT. No, it just looks stupid, I think. I said that last week. My mind is also not changed on that either. The yellow, or the whatever the fuck you want to call it, that's in the middle of the championship looks better, I think, with the white than it does with the black strap. So I don't even really mind the design of Asuka's new championship. My biggest gripe with it, and I can't complain too much because, again, it's better than the Raw and SmackDown Women's titles, is that on the actual championship belt, it says the Undisputed Women's Champion. And as other people have pointed out, I don't think WWE knows what the word undisputed means. That would indicate that there is only one women's champion. It's the Undisputed Women's Champion. But when you have another women's champion on the other show, and you have another world champion on the other show, then it's not exactly undisputed. So it was one thing to make that mistake with the WWE title, although they were already calling Roman Reigns the Undisputed WWE Universal Champion. I'm not even sure if that title has changed. I think he might still be called the Undisputed WWE Universal Champion. It might just be the WWE Champion. I don't really know. But he was already being called the Undisputed Champion. It's dumb now that we have a World Heavyweight Championship on Raw. I get it, but whatever. No one was ever calling Asuka the Undisputed Champion. She never won a unification match. That is just completely fucking random. That is just taking the exact design of the WWE one, of the men's one, and then putting in women's in there, and also calling it the Undisputed Championship. Why? Why would she be the Undisputed Champion? That came completely out of nowhere. I thought that was very silly. On the bright side, this also means not Roman Reigns. The other, there's Rhea Ripley, Ronda Rousey, Raquel Rodriguez. There's so many women and men with double R names, but I'm sorry, Rhea Ripley is who I meant to mention. Rhea Ripley, this will very likely mean that she is also on her way to getting a new championship belt. Probably on Monday's Raw, if not soon after. If I had to guess, I really fucking hope it's not this belt, but I can't imagine they would make it blue or red or whatever. I feel like that'd be very silly. They already have the yellow for this one. It's the yellow and the white. So they don't have any blue in there. There's no red. It's not the Raw or SmackDown title, which was always very stupid. The fact it's gone on for this long is kind of crazy. Because they've done belt swaps before, and it was very dumb then. It would be dumb now. I'm glad they're not doing that. But on the bright side, if Rhea Ripley is getting a new belt, very likely it will be the World Heavyweight Championship belt that we currently now have on Raw with the men, just with a white strap. And I think that would look really, really nice, especially for Rhea Ripley. Alexis mentioned this, but if they gave her like a custom-made championship, I mean, Rhea Ripley could be champion for a long time. And it's not often you see women get custom-made championship belts. I feel like that would be also cool, but it would also be short-lived. I mean, these custom-made titles are always short-lived. Daniel Bryan, Miz, Edge, the list goes on and on, Rock, Stone Cold. It would be short-lived, but I feel like Rhea Ripley, if anyone was to get a custom championship, it would be her. She probably won't. They'll probably just debut, again, a World Heavyweight Championship belt for the women. As far as what it could be called, I would assume it would be, I saw people say, the Women's World Heavyweight Championship. I don't think they have ever called a women's title a heavyweight championship. They don't include weight classes. Even with the men, there's no weight classes in WWE. And in wrestling in general, aside from the cruiserweights, there really isn't any weight classes. I would highly, highly doubt that they would call it the World Heavyweight Championship. They have never called any women's title, I think in any fucking company, a heavyweight championship. It's not that they can't be heavyweights. It's that they don't attach. They don't even announce the weight for the women, nor should they. I don't think it's not really necessary or respectful, whatever. It just sounds weird. Heavyweight championship. I mean, it doesn't bother me, but I've just never seen that done before, so I don't think they would do that. More realistically, more likely, it'll end up being the WWE. Or maybe not even WWE. I mean, it's all WWE, obviously, but it'll more likely be called the Women's World Championship. Now, that sounds generic, I get it, but we already have the WWE Women's Championship. You're not going to include heavyweight in there, I wouldn't think, so it would be very likely the World Women's Championship. I could be wrong. I mean, again, anything is better than Raw and SmackDown being included in that title, so that would be my guess, but we'll find out on Monday, if not soon after. Our first women's Money in the Bank qualifier on the show, Bayley and Michin. Didn't really have a lot of time, fine match, but it wasn't really about the match. It was about AJ Styles on commentary. Bayley cheating to win, as you expected that she would. Probably the most unpredictable match on the show, but even still, Bayley winning wasn't exactly in doubt. Right outcome there. And then, even more notable than the matchup itself was the fact that AJ Styles attacked afterward by carrying Cross and Scarlett. So we haven't seen Cross on SmackDown in, I think, 2 weeks. He was on the show 2 weeks ago, lost to AJ. He teased a feud with AJ 3 weeks ago, but it was only really to set up that match right before Night of Champions. Cross was never going to win that match. With AJ challenging for the World Heavyweight Championship at Night of Champions, he was never going to beat AJ prior to that pay-per-view. I'm down with that being a feud, though, but again, they really got to put in the effort in getting Cross over and getting people to care about carrying Cross, because currently, no one gives a fuck about carrying Cross. I personally like the guy. Not a lot of people give a shit. And based on the booking, I can see why. The next match they have should be good as their original encounter. But again, I'm not exactly sold on this being what takes Cross to that next level. Because he's been at a certain level for so long now, I wouldn't be surprised if he just continued to coast. And I'm not saying that he's coasting, but as far as WWE just keeping him in a certain spot as a stepping stone for other superstars. So I'm not getting my hopes up, but I do like the idea of the two feuding, personally. Our second men's Money in the Bank qualifier, Butch and Baron Corbin. The match was fine. Again, way too short to really be anything out of the ordinary, but what we got was good. Corbin said on the mic before, first of all, Corbin comes out, he looks fucking terrible. Like, he himself looks fine, but like the gear, what are we doing here? He's got the shirt on, he's always had a shirt on, but he comes out now with like fucking gym shorts and like he looks awful. He looks terrible. And I'm thinking, I am all on board. I might be in the minority here. I am all on board of the Baron Corbin refresh in NXT. How anyone can take the guy seriously based on how he's been booked on the main roster for the last fucking 6 or 7 years, I don't know. But I'm all for him going back to NXT. But they gotta give him new music. They gotta refresh the look. He looks fucking terrible with the gym shorts and the whatever the hell it is. He looks Bush League. He looks like an indie job, not an indie jobber. I've seen indie wrestlers with far better gear than he wears. He looks like a local athlete out there. aside from his size. So Butch beat him, thank God. You had Carmelo Hayes, the NXT champion, alongside Trick Williams, his friend, in the crowd. They've been feuding with Corbin recently on NXT, so for them to be out there kind of costing Corbin the win, distracting him, I thought was really cool. Butch winning, as he should. Butch, Pete Dunne, who should be Pete Dunne again, by the way, is not winning Money in the Bank in London. But the fact he's going to be competing in London on that show is very cool. The fact he's in the match is very cool. I'm fully in favor of that. Corbin, I was convinced, was not winning here. He is already in NXT, like I said, feuding with Carmelo Hayes. Hardly a threat. I know he beat Trick Williams. He beat Trick Williams on Tuesday, but still, he was not beating Butch here. Even though Butch is not the biggest star in the roster, Corbin was never going to win this match. Give him new music. Give him new gear. I forgot to mention this earlier, but like I said, he spoke before the match, and he mentioned, I've won Money in the Bank before, I'll do it again. In the comments, I like the touch here. The commentators were saying that, we can cash it in for any championship, and they kind of insinuated it could be the NXT title, which they did tease very briefly last year with Austin Theory showing up in NXT. They never went anywhere with that. He wasn't even at Halloween Havoc. Theory cashed in soon after for the United States Championship. I would have rather him cash in on the fucking NXT title. At that point, based on how he's been booked since then, and how that whole cash-in went down, it is comical, though, because I honestly don't know what this company wants. I'll mention this one time because it's not really about SmackDown. But like I saw Nick Khan saying that we want to make NXT more of a third brand, or like that was the reporter or whatever. I mean, the closest it came to be, it's always been developmental, first of all. Second of all, the closest it came to being a third brand was in 2019-2020, before COVID, and before they blew the whole fucking thing up in 2021. It is now definitively developmental. There is no question about it. With some of the people I see on that show, that is a developmental show. Yes, it still gets 2 hours every Tuesday. I don't know why. The show's been better lately, but still, it does not need 2 hours. It doesn't need to be on primetime television. It is a developmental show. So the fact that Corbin would win this briefcase, which he didn't and he won't, again, one of the worst cash-ins of all time, by the way. And he would go to developmental to cash it in for Carmelo Hayes' championship. And I love Carmelo. The idea of that happening is quite comical. So they shouldn't even tease. It should, honestly, it really should just be the World Heavyweight Championship or the undisputed WWE title. There's no real reason for that briefcase to be cashed in on anything else. For the women, if you want to cash it in, I mean, I wouldn't think it should be cashed in on the tag team titles either, but it really should be just for the main top two women's titles, and then for the men, it should be for the top two main men's titles, the World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE title, and that's it. None of this mid-card crap, NXT Championship. It's not on the same level as the other two titles. If you cash it in for that belt and not the other two world titles, you're a fucking idiot. The last women's qualifier in the show, IYO SKY beating Shotzi. Again, the match was whatever. Shotzi was in last year's Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, and she did not have a great showing at all, so I'm not bummed that she won't be in there. Her main roster run has been fucking awful. Like, her matches have just not been good. She's not clicked on the main roster. She's better as a babyface, yes, but like, I don't know. She's regressed since NXT. I don't know how, but she has regressed since NXT. The match was whatever. IYO SKY wins as she should. Bayley helping her win. So I am still, confident that we're headed towards a Damage Control split, but Bayley helping her win here is interesting. I really hope Bayley doesn't cost her the briefcase. IYO makes the most sense to become the Mrs. whatever Money in the Bank this year. So I really hope Bayley can attempt to. I would rather see IYO win and Bayley grows jealous of that. I think that makes more sense because IYO should be champion at some point. Bayley winning Money in the Bank again? No. Becky? No. Zoe maybe. Zelina's not going to win. Who else is in there? I think there's one other spot they haven't announced yet from the Raw roster, but it's probably going to be. I don't even know. I'm not even really sure who else is on Raw that would make sense, but to me, IYO SKY should win the briefcase. And we get to our main event, Austin Theory and Jey Uso for the United States Championship. Good match here, but like I said earlier, it's not about Theory. And I'll say this here, that Theory's booking since WrestleMania has been fucking putrid. At this point, he really benefits. Honestly, it's hurting the United States Championship more for that belt to be on him than it is benefiting Austin Theory. It's hurting the U.S. title to be around Theory's waist because, in main event of this show, and Jey Uso becoming champion would have been cool. I didn't expect it to happen. But it wasn't about Theory because, again, Theory is always stuck in situations where, and I like Theory too, he's always stuck in situations where it's not about him. He's the third wheel. He's been the third wheel for like 8 months now. He won the championship back in late 2021 during the midst of a Rollins and Lashley feud. He was the third wheel. He feuded with Rollins for a while, and he only retained against Rollins via either dirty tactics or when Logan Paul helped him win an Elimination Chamber. He beat Bobby Lashley on the Raw 30th anniversary show with help from Brock Lesnar. He beat John Cena on his own, yeah, but that match was not good, and the follow-up is nearly non-existent. He retained against Bobby and Bronson Reed at Backlash. Again, the feud was more about them two, Bobby and Bronson, than it was Austin Theory. Every week, I mean, even recently, like when he beat Sheamus, it's more about getting Pretty Deadly over, which is great. But still, it's like, it's hard to care. It's hard to fucking care. So he won here. Who gives a shit? The match was good. He won here because Solo got involved, was going to attack Jey until Jimmy came out and accidentally super kicked Jey Uso. So Jey Uso losing because of Jimmy. Jey's not happy about that. Paul saying, listen, you should have listened to me. Your brother, he has resentment towards you. He's trying to drive a wedge between the two brothers, which it's not going to work, I don't think. But I like the story they're telling. They are dragging this out as much as possible. But listen, when the story is as captivating and as compelling and as interesting to follow as it has been with this entire Bloodline storyline, I can't really complain. If you hate the Bloodline shit, then this stuff is not for you. SmackDown is not your show, because SmackDown is all about the Bloodline. But if you are into it, as I still am, even after all this time, then I have no issue with them dragging this out, because each chapter and each little tease has made sense, and it's fun to follow. They are really, really, really milking this for all it's worth. And again, when the story is as great as it has been, it's hard to complain. So, that was the conclusion of SmackDown. We will find out where Jey falls in line next week when Roman Reigns returns to the Blue Brand. Also next week, Bayley and... Not Bayley, I'm sorry. Actually, I think they announced this on SmackDown Lowdown earlier. They didn't announce it in the rundown here because they ended the show a bit early, so they ran down the matches again for next week. On SmackDown Lowdown, which I will review here on the channel a little bit later, it's going to be Bayley and Zelina Vega next week, I think. Or rather, IYO SKY and Zelina Vega. It's going to be AJ Styles and Michin after what happened during the Michin-Bayley match, or at least afterward. Michin and Styles against Karrion Kross and Scarlett. Scarlett's only second match televised in WWE. The first one being alongside Karrion against Riddick Moss, or at that point, Madcap Moss, and Emma. I think late last year, earlier this year, that was a while ago. So those two matches, or those two things advertised for next week. It's also going to be a tag team gauntlet match they set up. I also forgot to mention the Sami Zayn Jey Uso interaction on the show. Backstage, that was great. Also really well done. I love that Sami's still involved in the storyline, even though they beat Roman and Solo at Night of Champions. I think that's great. And he and Jey were close anyway. But yeah, so they announced, because Sami and Kevin Owens were backstage on the show, there's going to be a gauntlet match next week on SmackDown to determine, at what point I don't know, but the number one contenders to the Undisputed Tag Team titles. It's going to be Legato's Joaquin Wilde and Cruz del Toro. Them, OC, Pretty Deadly, which would be cool if they won. Street Profits, and I forgot the last team. Pretty Deadly. Oh, the Brawling Brute, Sheamus and Ridge Holland. So those 5 teams competing for a shot at the SmackDown, or rather Undisputed Tag Team titles, coming up next week on SmackDown. And then there was one more match. I don't remember. I think I wrote it down here in my SmackDown Lowdown notes. Charlotte Flair on the Grayson Waller effect next week, also being announced. So I think that was the other match or segment they announced for next week. So quite a bit to look forward to on SmackDown next week. I'm looking forward to that. Money in the Bank, SmackDown in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They're really setting up a lot for SmackDown in the coming weeks, which is great, to give people stuff to look forward to. I like this show. Everything served a purpose, held my interest. I love the Bloodline developments. No great matches aside from Escobar and Ali. This wasn't really about the in-ring action on the show. That was the best match by a country mile, but you know, the Bloodline stuff was great. We have a Unification tag team title match set up with Rousey, Shayna, Fire, and Dawn for a couple of weeks from now. Charlotte Flair's return was notable. Asuka has a new championship, like it or not. It's a step in the right direction, I think. Bayley's in Money in the Bank. IYO SKY's in Money in the Bank. Escobar, Butch, all in Money in the Bank. And Jey Uso's still on the outs with both his brother and the Bloodline, so we'll see where they go with that next. Thank you guys for checking out my review of SmackDown from Friday, a quality show, I thought. Be sure to like this review, Drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. I mentioned the SmackDown Lowdown review. That should be up today as well in a little bit, if it's not already, so keep an eye out for that. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.